Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2017 meeting of the Kern County Planning Commission, which I will now call to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Mr. Louie?
Here.
Mr. Babcock?
Here.
Ms. Garcia?
Here.
Ms. Poole? Mr. Sprague?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Ovia? Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Thank you. Also, we have our translator here for this evening. And sir, if you would please introduce yourself when you get the mic hooked up.
Mi nombre es Fernando López. Para las personas que no hablan inglés, solamente español, atrás en la mesa están los audífonos para que los utilicen.
Thank you. Okay, next item is commissioner member announcement or reports. Do we have any this evening? None? All right. Item C is approval of the June 8th, 2017 meeting minutes.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D is cases withdrawn or requests for continuance. We have none this evening. Item E is consent items, which we have none again this evening. Our next item is F. This is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the commission on any matter not on this agenda and over which the commission has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state your name for the record and spell your last name. Would anyone like to speak? Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Carol Bender, B-E-N-D-E-R. I haven't had the privilege of coming to some of these previous meetings that you've had, and I've spent some time looking over the notes and additional information. And since today's topic is on safety and noise, I wanted to specifically make reference to something from a previous meeting. I live in Western Rosedale. I've lived there for 25 years, and I spent quite a lot of time prior to moving there being a part of the Western Rosedale Specific Plan, which was last updated in 2007. I'm noticing back in 2010 when we tried to do this joint city-county update, which failed and never went any further than one meeting, that we were going to be looking at that. What I'm seeing here is that the Western Rosedale Specific Plan doesn't appear to exist anymore, and it's just sort of lumped into Western Rosedale in general, which concerns me. Western Rosedale Specific Plan is quite different than Urban Bakersfield Plan. I realize that it's within the sphere of influence, but the sphere of influence goes pretty far out into lands that are not even developed. I'm noticing in looking back at the March 23 notes that came out of the meeting, that it says that staff will be working directly with the various home builders and farming stakeholders, along with the City of Bakersfield staff and other service providers, to determine the extent of development that will be accommodated within Western Rosedale. For example, should there be growth boundary limits for higher density? Western Rosedale has historically been identified as a rural residential area connected by a series of multi-use trails. Is this still the vision? I'm having a little bit of a problem thinking that the home builders in our area and other stakeholders, not including the citizens apparently, are going to be deciding on whether we're going to throw the Western Rosedale Specific Plan out to accommodating the Urban Bakersfield Plan. What we've seen out there is that over time, the City of Bakersfield annexes the areas within the Western Rosedale Specific Plan and basically tells us, you know, hey, you can't live in this area forever. It's destined to be urban. It's part of the overall plan, and we do not have to adhere to the Western Rosedale Plan. That's going to be going out with the next general plan update, and they've been saying this for 7 years. So as a citizen out there, we have no teeth whatsoever to fight many projects because we can't even rely on the Western Rosedale specific plan. And we're really anxious to have this plan updated, but we would like to be part of it. And as many of you know, I've been a part of many planning commission meetings and made many statements, and I had no idea these meetings were occurring. Maybe it's my fault on my own, but I get so much stuff, but I never got anything regarding these meetings. Therefore, I'm sure none of my neighbors have. Thank you very much for letting me speak tonight, and I really urge you to not put the Western Rosedale specific plan to the wayside. We still, those people that have lived out there and bought out there for a specific reason and were part of that process deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
David Fluhart, F-L-U-H-A-R-T, Havilah, 1st District. Two things come to mind. First of all, earlier this week, County CAO Ryan Alslop had proposed a recommended budget. On page 7 and 8, he talks about the state and federal financing. And on page 8, he notices that there's probably 5 or 6 affordable housing programs that will be adversely affected most likely. And so that's one issue that I think is a concern for the Planning Commission in the near future. And on a second tangent, soon the marijuana environmental impact report and financial study will be released. And I'm sure that will make this hall quite a bit of fun and entertainment while we discuss those issues. So looking forward to the future, and that's pretty much it. Have a good evening, and you know, we're in God we trust. We're going to win. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to take advantage of this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings, which we have none this evening, but we do have our 6th and final workshop, which I am going to have staff give a presentation. Afterwards, anyone that wishes to come up and address the commission on the topics, the specific topics of tonight's workshop are welcome to. The speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. We ask that if, while you listen to the previous speaker, and you don't have any new information, we would ask that you refrain from repetitive comments and give us new and fresh comments, questions, ideas. Whatever you can do to help us through this process is greatly appreciated. But we don't need a lot of redundancy. So, given that, Mr. Murphy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. So, as you had mentioned previously in your opening comments, today marks the 6th scheduled Kern County General Plan Update Interactive Workshop. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is for staff to receive feedback as any information discussed may be utilized in the preparation of the upcoming General Plan Update. The topics for tonight's discussion include an overview of both the required noise and safety elements of the general plan. So I'll start with noise, and then we'll move on to the safety element. The 2004 general plan states that the preservation and enhancement of the acoustical environment relates directly to the quality of life that can be achieved in the county's communities. So by recognizing existing sources of noise pollution, taking reasonable steps to mitigate future impacts, and by preventing additional substantial sources of noise, the county can achieve a quieter environment and a more comfortable and calming community. Noise has been linked directly to human health, and aside from general annoyance, excessive noise is a source of discomfort. It interferes with sleep and disrupts communication and relaxation. So acoustics itself is the science of sound. And while the science is measured in very technical terms, My hope tonight is to provide your commission and members of the public with key points to kind of get a better understanding how sound is measured from a basic perspective so that we are all kind of jumping off and communicating from the same point. So noise itself is a subjective reaction to different types of sounds. It is typically described as any unwanted or objectionable sound. The standard unit of measurement of the loudness of sound is the decibel, or dB. The perceived loudness of sound is dependent upon factors including sound pressure level and frequency context. Within the usual range of environmental noise levels, perception of loudness is relatively predictable and can be approximated by A-weighted sound levels, or dBA. Decibels are based on the logarithmic scale. When the standard decibel is A-weighted, an increase in 10 dBA is generally perceived as a doubling of the loudness. For example, 70 dBA sound is half as loud as something that is 80 dBA and twice as loud as something that is 60 dBA. So everyday sounds normally range from 30 dBA, which is a very quiet environment, to 100 dBA, which is very loud. And if the clerk could put on the overhead. So this graphic, I believe, is the best presentation for anybody interested in this topic to understand decibels and what that means in your everyday environment. So as you can see on this graphic, a decibel level of 10 to 20 decibels is just audible. That includes your normal breathing, rustling leaves, things along those lines. On the opposite end of the scale, you have a jet engine. The jet engine decibel level is 140 dBAs. So again, this kind of garbage truck would be 100 dBAs. Normal conversations around 60 dBAs. So again, this graphic kind of gives the best example of what you hear and what that measurement is on some of the basic things that you encounter or any individual encounters on an everyday basis. So again, I have always found this chart to be this graphic to be very valuable in trying to understand this topic. So the effects of noise on people are generally placed in three separate categories. Subjective effects of annoyance, nuisance, or dissatisfaction. The other is interference with activities such as speech, sleep, or learning. And finally is the physiological effects such as hearing loss or sudden startling. In general, the more a noise exceeds the previously existing ambient noise level, the less acceptable the new noise will be judged to the person hearing it. So in most situations, a 3 dBA change in sound pressure level is considered just detectable difference. A 6 dBA change, either louder or quieter, is readily noticeable, and then a 10 decibel change, again, is a doubling if louder or halving if quiet of the subjective loudness of the particular use. There are generally two types of noise sources that your commission should be aware of. There is a point source, and then there is a line source. So a point source, think of a particular location, and whether it be a construction or a piece of equipment or something that starts at one particular spot, it doesn't move, and it just generates sound. Generally speaking, that sound level drops off at a rate of 6 decibels for each doubling of the distance. Whereas the other option is a line source. So think of a line source as a road or a railroad, where it is not a point source, it continually moves. Those decibels generally drop off at a rate of 3 dBAs per doubling of the distance. There are a number of methods that have been developed to measure sound over a period of time. They include the community noise equivalent level, CNEL, the equivalent sound level, LEQ, and then the day-night average sound level, LDN. So page 3 and 4 of your staff report identifies some of the various terminology as it relates to sound. what I'd like to do now is just kind of take a quick minute to briefly go over what those terms really mean. So the first is CNEL, which is the Community Noise Equivalent Level. This is commonly described in terms of the ambient noise level, which is defined as the all-encompassing noise level associated with a given environment. So the CNEL is a 24-hour, time-weighted energy average noise level based on dBA that measures the overall noise during an entire day. Noise that occurs during certain sensitive time periods are penalized for occurring at these times by adding decibels to the overall measurement. So think of this, if I were to try to determine what the CNEL is, I have a day CNEL, I have a night CNEL. You know, what happens during that day? What is the average decibel during these period of time? What is the average decibel during night hours or sensitive hours, things along those lines. The second term is the equivalent sound level, or LEQ. This sound level is the measure of a steady state. The sound level contains the same total energy as a time-varying signal over a particular time period. So a LEQ would be, hey, I want to measure the sound for a particular hour. What is the average sound for that hour? It's not necessarily averaged with the entire day. It is a defined period of time. What is that average sound level? And then the other term is the day-night average sound level, or LDN. This is similar to the CNEL, but the evening time period is not considered separate. So what that means is that based on an average noise level for a 24-hour period at a given location, this standard has been adopted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for the evaluation of community noise exposures. So the LDN is calculated by averaging the sound measures for each hour of the day at a given location and then penalizing the sleeping hours, which are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., by 10 dBAs to take into account the increased sensitivity of people for noises that occur at night. So how this measurement is generally done is you measure during the day, every hour, what is the average noise levels. When you get to these sensitive times, you continue to measure along those, what is the average noise level, and then based on all 24 hours, you then create an average for noise that impacts a particular distance, use, resident, things along those lines. So again, it's similar in CNEL in the fact that it combines and you average out your daytime hours and then any noises that occur in the evening. You also have a maximum sound level. So this is just the maximum sound level that is measured during a particular time period. And then you have your noise contours. Noise contour lines illustrate a noise source indicating consistent levels of noise exposure. CNEL contour lines are frequently utilized to describe a community's exposure to noise. So your commission may be familiar with these contour lines. Roads have contour lines. You know, you have a particular roadway. We know how much traffic travels along that roadway. We understand how much noise is made, and then maps are created that illustrate 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, what that noise level is, and those are your contour lines. Similar contour lines are done for railroad tracks, airports, and other types of point or line source items. You also have sound propagation. Again, we kind of discussed this before. A point source, the sound dissipates every time you double the distance. The sound drops off by 6 dBs. And then you have a line source, and every time you double the distance from the line source, the sound drops at a rate of 3 decibels. Vibration, that is unique from noise. It's unique because the energy is carried through structures in the earth, whereas noise is simply carried in the air. Again, vibration, as your commission is aware, I'm sure, is generally felt rather than heard. Vibration is measured in VDB, or vibration decibels. And again, to give you the range of what those numbers mean, they range from approximately 50 VDB, which is a typically background vibration velocity, to 100 VDB, which is the general threshold where minor damage can occur on fragile buildings. So that kind of gives you the range of how that is measured. Again, the major purposes of the Kern County noise element are, 1, to establish reasonable standards for maximum desired noise levels in Kern County, and 2, to develop an implementation program which could effectively deal with any noise problems or concerns. So page 5 on your staff report further goes through and identifies the various requirements that have to be studied and analyzed as part of our general plan update. Some of the highlights I want to just kind of touch base on, we will be going through an evaluation of our highways and freeways, our primary arterials and local streets. Any passenger and freight online railroad will be looked at. General aviation, military airport operations will be evaluated. Local industrial plants will be looked at, as well as other ground stationary noise sources. So again, our existing general plan did this, but things have changed since 2004, and so we're going to be going through an update to identify where those sources are located, what kind of noise is generated from them, things along those lines. Further, the general plan will then continue to evaluate and determine the best ways in which we should measure noise and how it should be considered in part of future discretionary actions that come before your commission and the Board of Supervisors. So in a nutshell, that is the general overview of the noise element, kind of the basic terms that are utilized in measuring noise, and then how it is applied to the planning process within Kern County. What I'd like to do next is briefly go over the safety element. So the aim of the safety element is to reduce the potential risk of death or injuries, property damage, and economic and social dislocation resulting from fires, floods, droughts, earthquakes, landslides, as well as other hazards and climate change impacts. Other locally relevant safety issues that can be looked at in the safety element include airport land use, emergency response, hazardous material spills, and even crime reduction is something that may also be included. The safety element very much relates to the physical constraints overlay, which is incorporated into the Kern County General Plan land use element. And what I mean by that is, let me zoom in here. So again, as part of our land use element, in addition to identifying residential, commercial, industrial districts, things along those lines, we go through a process of identifying areas within the county that are subject to physical constraints. Those physical constraints many times relate specifically to some of the items that are looked at in the safety element. For example, seismic hazards. You know, the general plan and property identified in the general plan, if it's located in a sensitive area that is subject to potential seismic activity, given the fact that we may have an earthquake or a fault in or near that vicinity, the general plan identifies that with a physical constraint overlay so that anybody that looks at the maps can at least tell not only what a property is designated, but what are some of the physical characteristics that they should be aware of. And again, this identifies landslides, shallow groundwater, steep slopes, areas of flood hazard. We also include some of our waste facilities. But again, the safety element is the main element that goes through and identifies how we've located those areas within the county, what are the measures by which construction can or cannot occur in those areas, and ultimately they provide guidance to your commission and the board as future development should occur. Is it located in an area that we should be allowing this development to occur based on safety element and seismic hazards and things along those lines. Another key component, which is not specifically identified on our land use maps, but fire hazard zones. You know, within the county, we have a range of fire hazard zones, some that are much higher than others. The safety element was that element that will further identify where those areas are located so that appropriate standards for development and land use planning can be considered when actions come before your commission. Since the 2004 general plan was adopted, there have been two key pieces of legislation that have been adopted by the state, specifically related to the safety element. Two of them, AB 3065 and then SB 1241 specifically identified and changed some of the measures and requirements that staff will have to look at as part of our general plan. A lot of it specifically related to the fire hazard areas within the county that we can identify. But further, as part of that element, or as part of the bill, is as we prepare this, and it's at a point where we have a draft, we are now required to send it to the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection so that that group can specifically review what we have put in our safety element, so that we can make sure that not only from the local level, we have had looked at it from a fire hazard concern, but also from a state level. And they can provide their feedback to help, one, ensure that we've done everything that we're supposed to, and then two, so that they can provide specific comments if there are any other suggestions that they believe should or should not be incorporated into our goals, our policies, and how we implement various projects, and specifically how they relate to these fire hazard zones. So again, as part of this general plan update process, staff will comprehensively review the various requirements and components required in the safety element. We will look at our various physical constraints to make sure that they are applicable, whether or not they need to be changed, and we will be going through that process as we move forward. That completes my presentation at this time. Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend is that if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those first. But the recommendation is that you take public testimony, receive and file this letter, and then provide comments to staff. What I would like to do after you take the public testimony and before you take your final action, I would like to just provide your commission and the members of the public kind of an overview of the next steps. As you had mentioned, this is our 6th and final interactive workshop that we're having right at the moment. So I don't want anybody to leave tonight, and I want your commission to kind of understand, now that we've gone through this process, what are the next steps, what is going to be happening, and again, I believe that'd be most appropriate to discuss after we've taken the public testimony and prior to any final conclusion of tonight's Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any questions from the commissioners? No. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, could I get a show of hands of how many people would like to address this commission this evening? Okay. Why don't you work your way down to closer to the podium? Take a seat down there, please. And somebody come up to the podium. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Renee Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N. I'm
Good
with
evening.
Clean, pardon?
Good evening.
Oh, thank you. I'm with Clean Water and Air Matter, and I'm also a representative of San Joaquin Valley Environmental Defense Center. I'm going to reiterate a little bit what Ms. Bender mentioned regarding the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan and the process that you're incorporating that into the update for the Kern County General Plan update system. You mentioned, I think Mr. Sprague had a comment at a previous meeting. Is the county currently updating the plan along with their plan, and how will the city achieve buy-in? Is the city involved in the planning process? It was mentioned previously that the commission, that the city and county are discussing the process. Who is discussing this? Has the Board of Supervisors approached the city of Bakersfield to work together, thus creating a comprehensive and coordinated effort? If not, what is proposed at this point? Has there been any mutual agreement on a plan of action? I ask this for numerous reasons, and I think it's a very critical issue because so much of the city has county islands, and it is an overlap, and it is an issue that does come before LAFCO frequently and can be addressed at different levels of government. So you might not have the answers tonight, but I do look forward to having that clarified for the record. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see if we can get you some answers this evening. Next speaker.
Necesito un traductor, por favor.
One moment, please.
Thank you. Voy a tratar. Buenas tardes, miembros del condado.
Good afternoon, members of the county.
Estamos otra vez aquí, enfrente de ustedes.
We are here before you once again.
Excuse me, I need his name.
I'm sorry. Mi nombre es José Ramón Colado, C-O-L-A-D-O.
My name is Jose
Ramón Colado.
Ramón Colado, C-O-L-A-D-O.
Correct.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Estamos aquí otra vez
We are here.
representando a la comunidad de la Avenida Lairo,
We're here once again representing the community of Lido Avenue.
que vinimos el pasado 27 de abril,
We were here last on the 27th of April,
hablando de las necesidades de nuestra comunidad,
speaking about the needs of our community,
especialmente de la necesidad de nuestros hijos que van a la escuela, que es parte de la seguridad también.
specifically about the needs of our children who attend school. That is also part of the safety element.
Nosotros estamos conscientes de dónde vivimos,
We are aware of where we live,
al lado de la prisión estatal de Delano.
next to the Delano State Prison,
Aún así, nos gusta vivir en nuestro vecindario.
and still we enjoy living in our neighborhood.
Pero me pregunto, ¿se gasta bastante dinero en mantener estas prisiones más grandes?
But I ask myself, don't we spend enough money maintaining these larger prisons?
¿Seguras? Es importante,
That's important for sure,
porque deben de ser seguras.
because they must be safe.
Nuestra comunidad también debe de ser segura.
Our communities must also be safe.
Nosotros también debemos de estar seguros.
We should also be safe.
Somos trabajadores, pagamos impuestos.
We are taxpayers, we are workers.
Parece que somos una comunidad olvidada.
It seems that we are a forgotten community.
Necesitamos servicios básicos para nuestra comunidad.
We need basic services for our community.
Necesitamos banquetas, necesitamos pavimento,
We need sidewalks, pavement,
necesitamos luz pública.
public lighting.
Eso es parte de la seguridad de nuestra comunidad también, que debe de ser incluida en su presupuesto.
That is, the safety of our community should also be included in your budget.
Sabemos que este año están ustedes por aprobar 2.5 billones de dólares,
We know that this year you're on the verge of approving $2.5 billion.
que eso sirve para arreglar muchos lugares del condado de Kern.
That money will serve to fix many areas in the county.
Sabemos que hay mucho dinero que se va a invertir en prisiones, freeways, comunidades, ciudades.
We know there's going to be a lot of money spent on prisons, freeways, communities, highways.
Nosotros también necesitamos parte de ese dinero para arreglar nuestras comunidades,
We also need some of that money in order to fix our communities.
especialmente la avenida Lytle, en donde nuestros hijos tienen que caminar 1 milla. Lytle Avenue.
Specifically, Lido Avenue, where children must walk many miles.
Donde el camión no entra a nuestra calle porque no tiene pavimento.
Buses will not enter our street because it's not paved.
La última vez que venimos, tomaron mi información, mi teléfono y dijeron que alguien me iba a contactar
The
para
last-
referirme a un departamento.
The last time I came, I was told to leave my callback information.
No
my number,
sucedió.
and nobody ever got back to me. It did not occur.
Estamos aquí otra vez,
We are here
con
once
toda nuestra
again.
comunidad aquí, otra
Our
vez.
community is here once again.
Necesitamos ser escuchados.
We need to be heard,
Necesitamos ser incluidos
We
en
need
ese budget.
to be
Oh, dije
included
budget, ¿ah?
in that budget.
I know English now. Esto no tiene que continuar así, señores, señoras.
Ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't have to continue.
Necesitamos su ayuda. Necesitamos
We need,
lo que
your,
ustedes pueden hacer.
we need your help. We need you to do whatever you can.
Ese presupuesto tan grande,
That
no
big-
necesitamos tanto.
That big budget, we don't.
We don't need that much. Out of the $2.5 billion, we don't need that much.
We do not need that much money out of
Could
the
you have
2.5.
him please wrap up his,
Por favor, escúchenos. Los invito a nuestra calle para que vean verdaderamente dónde estamos.
Please hear us out. We invite you to come to our street so you can see where we truly are.
Gracias.
Thank you.
okay, hold on, please. Commissioner Sprague, do you have a question for the speaker?
Question for you or for staff. I went and visited west of Delano and looked at these roads and this site. But are these is that area in the city of or city of Delano boundary, or is it
No.
within the county?
O es parte del condado de Kern.
It's part of Kern County.
It's part of Kern County,
Sí.
but isn't the city of Delano boundary run out past the prison to the west?
La prisión es curioso, la prisión es parte de la ciudad de Delano.
That's curious. The prison is part of the city of Delano.
And this area, the prisons are further west in this area, it appears. So it appears to me that this particular area he's speaking of is within the city of Delano city boundary.
No.
No.
Hi, sorry to butt in.
No, ma'am, you can't butt in.
Okay, can you say that you've gone to the city of Delano and
Tuvimos una junta con la ciudad de Delano y
We
no
had
somos
a
parte de la ciudad de Delano.
meeting with the city of Delano, and we were told we are not part of the city of Delano.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Gracias.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Colado, Colado, son of Jose. I'm here representing my community in Delano between County Line Road and Cecil Avenue, just east of the prison. As a child, every morning and every afternoon was always a hassle. I would walk 15 minutes to catch the bus and 15 minutes to walk home. Every day that I walked, I was always afraid that I would be attacked by stray dogs or coyotes and that nobody would be there to help me, not even my mother or my father. And aside of the fear, I struggled to walk home, whether it was during the winter, walking through the mud and in the rain, or during the summer when the dirt would get so hot and it would burn the sole of my shoes. It was a struggle that no child should ever go through. Now, as I'm older, I am still afraid of that walk, not for myself, but for my little brother, my little sister, and for all the other children in my community. Knowing they are left in a corner to walk 15 minutes home on their own is not right, as a street must be made to ensure that my brothers and every single child in my community arrives to their home safely without being afraid. But after 16 years of living here, I see that my representatives, which is you guys, still haven't done a single thing to change that. My parents pay taxes, everybody in my community pays taxes, and yet we still haven't seen anything for us in return. I know a big portion of that money goes to freeways and prisons and roads, but when it comes to us, it's as if we're forgotten. So we ask you all to please hear us out and help our community become safer for the children and for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Jauregui, Jauregui. My family and I live on Lido Avenue in Delano. Our concerns this evening is that we don't have an adequate evacuation plan in case of a catastrophe happens on our road, like earthquakes, fire, flooding. Our roads are flooded many times, and for some reason, the landlines of our telephone lose service. We must have a way of communicating with emergency services in case of an emergency, and we are not able to when weather affects our road. Our road in Delano needs an effective response of emergency service following a catastrophe event. Another major concern we have regarding the prison Ujet Road, when you have an emergency like an escaped inmate, we fear that may come into our homes or properties, or that one of our children will be a victim of bullets meant for the escapee. A secure barrier would assist us that we are safe from convicted criminals escape the prison and from bullets fired by prison guards. My neighbors, my family are asking for adequate emergency services and facilities to be available to us. My neighbors and I would like to thank you all for your time in hearing our concerns. May you have a good evening.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, necesito un intérprete.
Okay. One moment, please.
Thank you.
I need her to state her name and spell her last name.
Y deletrea su apellido.
Mi nombre es Anabel Márquez,
My name is Annabelle Marquez,
M-A-R-K-U-Z,
M-A-R-Q-U-E-Z.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Vengo de la ciudad de Shafter.
I come here from the city of Shafter.
Vengo representando las colonias del sur de Shafter,
I represent the southern neighborhoods in Shafter.
que contienen muchas necesidades,
They have a lot of needs,
como drenaje,
like drainage,
banquetas,
sidewalks,
alumbrado público.
public lighting.
No hay gas natural.
There is no natural gas.
No tenemos mucha seguridad
We do not have a lot of safety,
y nos está atacando el vandalismo.
and we are being attacked by vandalism.
Si estas colonias
If these neighborhoods
se manejaran con estos servicios,
were to be managed with these services,
tendrían un impacto,
they would have an impact,
muy buen impacto en la comunidad.
a very good impact on our community,
Porque muchos niños van a la escuela
because many children go to school.
y tienen que cruzar charcos, tierra porque
They
no hay banquetas.
have to cross puddles and dirt because there's no sidewalk.
Y el 60% ha incrementado de robos de viviendas.
Property crimes have increased 60%.
No tenemos una guía de emergencia en caso de terremotos
We have nothing to guide us in case of an emergency, in case of an earthquake
de ninguna clase.
of any kind.
Les agradecería mucho
It would be greatly appreciated
que si por favor nos incluyeran
if you can please include us
en las demás ciudades que tienen necesidades.
along with the other cities that have needs.
Gracias
Thank you
por permitirnos estar aquí.
for allowing us to be here.
Buenas
Thank
tardes.
you.
Gracias a usted. Su nombre, ¿sí? ¿Cómo se deletrea su nombre?
Mi nombre es Estela Pérez,
My name is Estela Perez,
P-E-R-E-Z.
P-E-R-E-Z.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Hoy venimos mis vecinos y yo a hablarles sobre la seguridad,
Okay. My neighbors and I are here tonight to speak to you about safety
de la seguridad de nuestra avenida Lairo.
of
también.
our Lido Avenue.
Primero, necesitamos una barda para separar la prisión de
First
nuestra calle.
of all, we need a fence to separate, a wall to separate our neighborhood from the prison.
La razón es porque los prisioneros salen a cortar árboles
The
muy
reason is because the prisoners go out and cut trees
cerca de nuestras casas
close to our homes,
y nuestros hijos no están seguros afuera jugando
and our children are not safe outside when they go out and play
porque ellos hacen la jardinería que está enfrente de nuestras casas.
because they're doing gardening work right in front of our homes.
Segundo, necesitamos servicio de boca de aguas o fire hydrant
Okay. Number two, we need fire hydrant services.
para cuando tengamos un incendio los bomberos puedan agarrar agua cerca.
So that in case there's a fire, the firemen will have a source to get water from a nearby source.
Yo tuve una experiencia hace algunos meses.
A few months ago, I had an experience.
Una noche había un incendio grande a un lado de mi casa
One night there was a big fire next to my home.
y los bomberos, cuando les hablé, no sabían ni dónde era mi casa.
When I called the fire department, they did not even know where my house was.
Y cuando llegaron, el agua la traían desde muy lejos en pipas de agua.
And when they arrived, they had to transport the water from far away in water trucks.
Tercero, para nuestra seguridad,
Number three, for our safety,
necesitamos el membrete o nombre de la calle en la entrada de la avenida Lairo Avenue.
we need a sign or a street sign at the entrance to Lido Avenue.
Para cuando tengamos una emergencia, los bomberos, sheriff,
case of an emergency, the fire department, the sheriffs,
o ambulancia puedan encontrar nuestra calle más pronto.
or ambulances will be better able to find our street.
Les agradecemos de antemano su atención y ojalá
Appreciate your attention beforehand.
que puedan ayudarnos un poco a mi vecindario que estamos un poco olvidado.
And
Muchas
hopefully you
gracias.
can help my neighborhood, which is forgotten a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes,
Good afternoon.
mi nombre es Juan Carlos Martín del Campo,
My name is Juan Carlos Martín del Campo. ¿Cómo se
M-A-R,
llama? El apellido.
M-A-R, Martín,
M-A-R-T-I-N.
M-A-R-T-I-N, D-E-L,
D-E-L
C-A-M-P-O.
C-A-M-P-O.
Ok, tocante a esto, soy miembro de la misma comunidad de la Lairo Avenue.
In this regard, I am also a member of the Lido Avenue community.
Yo sé que ha sido muy extenso todos los elementos que hemos estado exponiendo hacia ustedes.
I know it's been very extensive, the elements we have exposed before you.
Como esta junta se trata de ruidos y seguridad,
This meeting is about noise, pollution, and safety.
me gustaría ahondar un poquito más tocante a esos temas,
I would like to touch a little bit more on those issues,
como lo es la luz pública.
like public lighting.
Sabemos que la luz pública
We know that public lighting
ayuda a reducir el crimen
helps reduce crime
y a incrementar la seguridad
and increases security or safety
de los peatones
of people who walk on foot.
a peligros,
Pedestrians,
a peligros no vistos.
to unseen dangers.
Cuando se oscurece,
When it gets dark,
no hay ninguna luz que ayude a identificar a personas caminando o niños,
there is no light that will help identify people walking or children.
solamente las luces de los vehículos que operamos.
Only the headlights from the vehicles that we drive.
Y todo el tiempo hay niños jugando en sus bicicletas,
There's always children playing on their bikes,
visitando a sus amigos.
visiting their friends.
Entonces por eso pedimos
So that is why we request
que volteen sus ojos un poco hacia comunidades que en realidad necesitan los servicios
to
básicos.
turn your eyes a little bit more towards communities that are in need of basic services.
La barda continua o enfrente
The
a
wall
la prisión
in front of the prison
ayudaría no solamente a la seguridad de la comunidad,
help not only the safety of the community,
sino también a prevenir los fuertes vientos y polvaderas
but also
que
to
se producen.
help protect against the strong winds and the dust storms that are produced.
Y también los ruidos de la prisión.
And also the noises coming from the prison.
La prisión repetidamente suena su alarma con un ruido muy fuerte.
Repeatedly they set off their their sirens or alarms.
En horas tarde de la noche,
And late at night,
cuando usted está descansando, de repente ese ruido lo despierta sin saber
at home resting, and all of a sudden there's a loud noise that wakes you up while you're at home.
si algún prisionero se escapó o por qué es esa sirena.
One will think, did somebody escape, a prisoner, or why are they sounding that siren, that alarm?
También tienen una área de tiro o práctica de
They
tiro.
also have a area where they practice fire and shooting,
Usual-
a shooting range.
Usualmente empiezan a tirar entre las 4 y 5 de la mañana
They usually start firing or shooting between 4 and 5 in the morning.
por 1 hora y media o hasta
For
2 horas
an hour
continuamente.
and a half up to 2 hours continually.
Y constantemente tenemos que estar escuchando todo ese tipo de disparos.
We're constantly hearing all that gunfire.
El hecho de pedir ayuda para hacer una carretera pavimentada
The fact that we're asking for help to build a paved road
ayudaría mucho a incrementar la seguridad porque habría más patrullaje.
would help immensely reducing crime because there would be more patrols.
Tengo 12 años viviendo en esa comunidad.
I've been living in that community for 12 years.
En 12 años
In 12 years,
solamente he mirado patrullaje que no sea por llamadas de emergencia,
I've only seen patrols that had not been called by an emergency
como en 2 o 3 ocasiones,
on only 2 or 3 occasions
nada más.
only.
Entonces, eso también ayudaría a que los buzones se pusieran enfrente de la propiedad
That would also help having mailboxes in front of the property
y evitaría el robo
and would avoid
del
help avoid
correo.
a mail theft.
Recientemente, hace un mes y medio,
Recently, about a month and a half ago,
mi hijo aplicó para una tarjeta de crédito
my son applied for a credit card.
y cometió el error de poner la dirección de la casa.
He committed the mistake and he included the address of the house.
Cuando él investigó
When
si ya había llegado su tarjeta de crédito,
he looked in to see if his credit card had arrived,
llamó a la compañía
he called the company
y le dijeron que la tarjeta ya se estaba usando
and they told him the credit card was already in use.
e irónicamente ya habían hecho hasta un pago en la tarjeta.
Ironically, they hadn't even given a payment on the credit card.
Would you ask the gentleman to wind up? He's went way past his time.
Ya. Ok, muchas gracias por su atención y espero por favor que pongan atención o miren un poco hacia la comunidad y otras comunidades también que
I
están en
thank you
necesidad.
very much and ask you to look towards the community and other communities that are also in need.
Gracias por
Thank you for
escucharnos.
hearing me.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Chris? I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you bring the gentleman back up?
It's a question for staff.
Oh, it's for staff. I'm sorry. Go ahead and have a seat. Mr. Sprague.
Mr. Murphy, I think the panel here is a little confused about the boundary of this particular area that's west of Delano that he's speaking of. And so at the next July 13th meeting, I think that we're having, could staff provide an aerial photograph of the area, a boundary of the area that he's speaking about?
Commissioner Sprague, actually, if the clerk can turn on the computer, I have a feeling I know where they're referring to.
Okay, and then also if we could learn who is the state assembly person and Senate person that represents this particular area so that we could make contact with them county-wise to see if there's some state or possible federal aid that we could get for them to improve their area. I think that would be helpful for the commissioners as well as the supervisors and county staff.
Also,
Thank you.
I am aware of a program, I may not have the right name, but I believe it's Safe Walks to Schools. This is where curb, gutter, and sidewalk are placed on roadways leading to the schools in an area. I participated in the construction of several of these projects. I think this goes back about 10 years. I don't know if this program still exists, and I don't know who funds it. But maybe this is something that Mr. Sprague brought up, bringing in the state members that represent this area. Maybe they could look into this program as well.
Okay. If the clerk could turn on the computer.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Poole?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on a little bit while we're giving suggestions. It might be good if county staff could put these folks in touch with Supervisor Gleason's office.
Okay. Next speaker?
Well, Mr. Chairman, actually.
I'm
here-
sorry, you weren't through.
Yeah, there's two things here. So
Okay.
first,
One
let's just
moment,
go
please.
through. First, let's just go through the map real quick, just real quick. This is Lytle Avenue. The areas in gray represent the city of Delano boundaries. I'm assuming this is generally the area in which these residents reside and may be talking about. If that is correct, there's a couple different things just here to note. So if there is a roadway, if there is a roadway, how roadways are maintained and things along those lines, especially on jurisdictions like this, there could be a number of things involved. We may have to coordinate. There could be joint agreements in terms of who maintains which side of the road. That is absolutely something that staff can look at and can be evaluated as part of the general plan update and all roads in general as they relate to city and county areas where they connect and come together. But again, I do believe that's probably the area that these residents are referring to. And then while I have a chance real quick, just for the members of the audience, I'd like to take just a minute to kind of reiterate the purpose of the general plan. I believe that all of these comments are very good comments, I have said before, because they provide your commission with the knowledge and concerns from residents that live in a particular area, so that when future projects come before your commission, you know that this is an area where the following items have been concerns or they've been identified, and you can consider those in your future actions. The general plan itself and the project that we are working on right now is a policy document. There may be able to put in language in the general plan that says we should coordinate with the city of Delano or with the prison so that we could potentially have some wall built or anything along those lines. You know, it can help shape the policy for future projects. What I do want to make sure that the residents here tonight understand is that this is the Planning Commission. They have no jurisdiction over allocation of funds. They do not consider the budget. They do not approve the budget. They have no authority to allocate any money for road improvements, things along those lines. However, they do help provide input into shaping the general plan, which is a policy type of document that may specify these are areas that need more attention. These are areas that would benefit from the following types of programs. So your comments are extremely valid and important. I do just want to make sure that residents know that this commission does not have any authority to make any absolute changes today or even in the future. We're here to craft a long-term policy build-out document of what your community you would like it to look over the next 10 to 15 years. So again, I encourage these comments to continue because they provide the appropriate insight as to what type of policies we should include. But again, I do want people to at least have an understanding and not leave tonight thinking that your comments and that this commission can tomorrow take an action and then a street would be built. Just because this is not the appropriate group of individuals that can make those particular decisions.
And then through the chair to Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy, could you possibly email me a copy of this aerial so that I've got something to speak to the appropriate people about, and possibly the rest of the commissioners may want this also?
Yes, I would like it emailed as well.
And then I would like to tell the speakers tonight about their testimony, that your testimony is well heard, it's not falling on deaf ears. I may not, as a planning commissioner, be able to do a lot about it, but on a personal basis, I can make contact to local officials as well as state officials and federal officials to see if we can get grant money or something going to accumulate the necessary amount of money necessary to improve your area. So I would commit to try to helping that area west of Delano by making the proper contact to government officials that may have the power to help you. So I will give that a shot, see what I get. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I'll certainly try. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're ready for our next speaker. I'm sorry, Ms. Poole?
Yeah, so it'd be really helpful, I think, to get a better understanding at some stage. I understand you can't answer this tonight, but maintenance of that road, you know, how the other thing that I'd be interested to know is that looks like pretty funky city limit lines. So to understand when that annexation west took place and sort of how the lines look the way they do, I think that'd be helpful for these folks to know and for us to understand as well.
Thank you.
Okay, let's try this one more time. Give you some good exercise.
3 times, huh? Mi nombre es Javier Cruz,
My name is
C-R-U-C.
Javier Cruz, C-R-U-E-Z.
El problema, yo vengo por otro problema de Leno,
I'm here for another Delano problem.
pero quisiera apoyar lo que ellos, porque vivo cerca de allí, es el
But
problema.
I would like to support what they said because I live near them.
No quisiera que los escuchen, sino que les hagan algo.
I would prefer for you to take action and not just listen to them.
Porque hay gente que en la ciudad, yo tengo experiencia en la ciudad de Leno.
¿Gente de qué?
Yo tengo experiencia en la gente de Leno.
I have experience with Delano people.
Nos escuchan, pero nunca nos oyen, nunca nos hay solución.
They hear us, but they do not listen to us. There's never any solutions.
Y espero a hoy, es mi primera vez
And
aquí.
this is my first time here today.
Y me gusta a las personas, creo que están bien conscientes. Ellos.
And I like you. You look like you're aware, well aware.
Yo vengo por otra razón.
I'm here for a different reason.
En Deleno, yo quisiera pedirles
In Delano, I would like to request
que me ayuden, no sé si son ustedes o otras personas.
to help me. I don't know if you can or other people can.
Quisiera que quiten los troques de adentro de la ciudad, los big trucks. Semis.
I would like for you to remove the big semi trucks from within the city.
Que hagan algo para educar a los representantes de la ciudad.
To do something to educate the representatives of the city.
City manager y todos los políticos de allí.
The city manager and all the other politicians are.
Porque hace falta quitar la corrupción que existe ahí en el pueblo
You need to rid that town of all the corruption that exists there
y los favores entre ellos mismos.
and the favoritism.
Y quisiera que nos perjudican, las calles están muy malas.
And our streets are in very bad condition.
Y hace falta que los eduquen
¿A quién?
a los de la ciudad, a los representantes de la
And
ciudad.
the representatives from the city of Delano must be educated.
No creo que haya dinero para educarlos,
I don't think there's money to educate them.
pero si hay algo de mis taxes, quisiera que eduquen aunque sea uno de ellos.
But if you can use my tax money to educate at least one of them,
Porque hay mucho dinero,
because there's a lot of money there.
pero hace falta que ustedes y todo el gobierno de todo Estados
But what
Unidos
is needed is for you and all the rest of the government here
vayan a las comunidades donde estamos la gente, que les damos la comida para que coman.
to go out to the communities where the people who pick the food that you eat live and work.
Son los campesinos
The farm workers,
los que necesitamos mucha ayuda de todos ustedes.
we need a lot of help from all of you.
Porque si no hay campesinos,
With-
todos nos vamos a morir de hambre.
Without farm workers, we will all starve to death
Porque ustedes no saben cultivar nada de eso.
because none of you know how to cultivate any of that.
Okay.
Les
Would
pido
you,
por favor,
ask him to wrap it up,
Que
please?
ya la acabe, por favor.
sí, pido por favor y me disculpen
Please forgive me, and I ask you to please.
y espero volverlos a ver en mi comunidad.
I hope to see you again, but in my community.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Did everyone got a translation aid or not? Was there enough or not?
I don't know how many people got, I think they have the earpieces.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so I'm going to be really brief.
State your
Juan
name for the
Flores,
record.
Juan Flores, Flores.
Okay.
And I'm going to, if you guys don't mind, if I'm going to give mine English and Spanish. I will not take all my time, I promise. Just because I know there's some residents, there were not enough translation equipment, so not everyone is going to understand. So I want to set mine both in English and Spanish. On the safety issue, I would like to recommend that we have some oil and gas setbacks from residences and schools. These will reduce the public exposure to fires, explosions, blowout, and other hazards associated with accidental release of crude oil, natural gas, and hydrogen sulfide gas. And as an example of that, I'll give you, in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, 8 families in Nelson Court in Irvine, California were evacuated for more than 9 months. When they were evacuated, there were enough fumes within their homes to create an explosion. That's why the fire department of Kern County decided that it was important for them to be evacuated. The street Nelson Court runs west to east or east to west, whichever way you want it, but only the families on the north side got evacuated, and the families on the south side did not get evacuated. somehow the department said if there's a huge explosion, the neighbors in front are not going to be threatened by the fire. But what that brings to mind is that we don't have a proper evacuation system when things like this happen. And we would like to see something like this on the safety plan so that things like this don't happen again. Again, they were evacuated in 9 months. Those homes lost their value completely. Nobody that knows what happened on that neighborhood would actually go and buy a house there anymore. There has also been some oil spills in the community of Lamont, and these oil spills have landed all the way on the back patios of these homes. And there's no proper way to do the cleanups. Families don't even know that it's crude oil that's just making puddles on the back of their yards. And I'm going to be really brief in Spanish. Estoy aquí para pedirles las zonas de protección para el petróleo y gas de residencias y escuelas. Esto reduciría la exposición del público al fuego, explosiones y otros peligros asociados con la liberación accidental de petróleo crudo, gas natural y gas sulfuro de hidrógeno, como sucedió en la comunidad de Arvin hace 3 años ya, en el 2014, donde 12 familias fueron evacuadas por 9 meses. Esto no puede seguir pasando en un condado donde estamos nosotros extrayendo la mayor cantidad de petróleo. Tenemos que tener planes de seguridad en lugar para proteger a nuestras comunidades. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Renee Nelson again. I just wanted to quickly address the Safe Routes to School, NELSON. That's a federal funded program. Generally, the funds are allocated through Kern COG. The Delano representative on the Kern COG is Ruben Pascual, and Zach Scribner and David Couch are the county representatives. Those would be a place to start for the sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Miguel Garcia, Garcia. I come from the city of Arvin. I have a couple of things to talk about. The first one is I'm a little bit concerned about Highway 223, which passes through Bear Mountain Boulevard in Arvin. There's a bunch of semi-trucks that pass through Highway 223 on Bear Mountain Boulevard. I believe this is a huge concern in regards to noise and safety. In regards to noise, these semi-trucks bring a lot of noise into the city, especially on that road. And safety, a lot of children, they walk on Bear Mountain Boulevard from school. And so there's a bunch of semi-trucks that pass through there. And so I believe that this is a huge safety issue. And I wish that you guys can take in consideration in thinking of a different route for these semi-trucks. I know they can go around on 58 through Bakersfield. They don't need to cross through Bear Mountain Boulevard to take a shortcut. Let them go the other way. Now the second thing is Comanche Road. A few meetings back, we mentioned Comanche Road. This has been a huge issue with the city of Arvin, and it's been going back and forth. The city of Arvin, they talk about it, and they say that they're just waiting for the county to pretty much give them their portion of the money to fix this road. So I'm here to let you guys know that we're still waiting to hear from the county to see when are you guys going to talk with the city of Arvin and the city council to come up with some kind of agreement to fix this road. It's a huge safety issue because the road is in no, you can't drive through there. I mean, the road is just, it's bad. There's no sidewalks. And so the city of Arvin already mentioned that they are not gonna fix their part of the road until the county provides their half. And so I ask you guys to please take in consideration this big issue that's been going on for years, because the roads is just in bad state, and so we can't continue driving through there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Jose Mireles, Mireles. I'm a resident of Lamont. I've been living there for 46 years. And I'm here to talk about flooding. You know, it gets real bad in Lamont, and this year our students have to lose like 3 or 4 days of school because due to the flooding. I wish you guys would put something in this and do something about the flooding that's in Lamont. Even the residents have to pay for that because we have to pay flood insurance, which is real high cost, and we're like 90% of the residents of Lamont are farm workers, and it makes it real hard for them to pay for their flood insurance. So all this is due because the farmers, they block to save their crops, and they put like big walls in there, and this is what's causing most of the flooding in Lamont. Another of the issues that I want to bring up to you guys is my parents live on Wharton Street, and there's a lot of trucks that pass through there because there's a packing shed right there. And real early hours of the morning, you can hear the trucks hooking up the trailers, leaving more trailers. They take like half of the streets. And when you're going on Main Street, you turn right on Wharton, they block, because it's real small, they block the whole roadway, and you have to wait for them to get off of the streets. And I think that something should be done about that too. And it's a community area. There's kids walking and running, going to school, and it makes it real dangerous for them to walk to school because of all the diesel trucks that are going through there. I think that something should be done. They should be fined or something, or move them out of there so the residents can have a safety area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Jason Alvarez, Alvarez. I'm here to talk about the safety element. I want to feel safe walking in my community in unincorporated Greenfield and Rexland Acres. As a youth, I want to see safe spaces like community centers or projects and programs for the youth to be a part of. This includes not having or allowing for 4 marijuana dispensaries be located in my community. I would rather have healthy choice stores than marijuana dispensary. This is a great concern for my community. Thank you, and please address my comments.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Patricia Leal, Leal, and I am a policy advocate with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I know tonight is the last community workshop scheduled for the general plan, and I want to thank the Planning Commission for being a part of this process. Both community residents from different communities throughout Kern have and continue to be present here tonight to express the needs and the strong policies and programs needed to be adopted in the 2018 general plan. As the staff department develops its draft general plan, we look forward to continue meeting with the staff and ensure that comments expressed by community members are addressed in strong policies or broader policies in the general plan, and that state policies like SB 1000 are adequately incorporated. We will continue to be present in the different stages of the general plan, and we look forward to working with the Planning Commission to ensure that the general plan does address the concerns of folks that have shared with you all. More in specific, I guess, talking a little bit about a comment about the general plan, not going into specifics, and not necessarily voting or addressing the budget or taking any type of decisions in the budget process that the county Board of Supervisors take. Although that doesn't happen, the general plan does guide how the budget is crafted and how the regional transportation plan and the active transportation plans, just to name a few plans, take the direction. So that's why the general plan is so important, and that's why it's so important for community residents to be here tonight to talk more in specific of their concerns. So in the future, these concerns or issues do not come up, because hopefully these issues would be addressed and strong policies in the general plan to not see this happening again. And now moving forward to the safety element, let me catch my breath. Moving forward with the safety element, one bill that wasn't addressed in the staff report is SB 379. And this would require cities and counties to include climate adaptation and resiliency strategies in the safety elements of their general plans upon the next revision. And this does include starting January 1, 2017. So it would have to be included for this general plan update. And this would help mitigate and have adaptation policies to address heat, drought, flooding, and having cooling centers. And this includes a set of goals, policies, objectives, and specify feasible implementation measures. And hopefully this would also be looking at like the problem mentioned in Lamont with the runoff water that happens every time it rains. And that's just one example. In regards to the safety element, we would also like to see specific programs that protect vulnerable communities in the event of a natural disaster, like having a different plans ready in case of a natural disaster. Address and mitigate the air pollution. Again, Metro Bakersfield has one of the worst air qualities. The dust storm in Arvin, and just to name Arvin for example, but this can create accidents, and with the high valley fever that we see in the entire San Joaquin Valley, this is definitely a concern. Current zoning to be updated, so already overburdened communities are not allowed to have more heavy industrial facilities in community. Along with this, I would like to see a map that is understandable, that identifies already existing heavy industrial facilities or fire hazards. Maybe this already exists, but if it could be updated and shared with the public, that would be great. Moving forward with the noise, one question is, how do we really measure noise, especially in areas where you do not only have cement plants, but also how do you mitigate with trucks coming in and out? Large arterial highways, so in a certain community like Rexland Acres, you don't only see the cement plant, but you also see trucks coming in and out, and then large arterials like the Union Avenue and Pacheco Avenue, or large arterials that affect. I'll wrap it up. And I know this is the last community workshop, so I want to make sure that I address my points. And then also one more is align development standards with cities and county and mitigate solution with existing facilities already in community. For example, some cement plants or oil industry facilities that have been there since 1959 or whatnot do not have to comply with the updated general plan policies. So what exactly are we doing to address the concerns that are brought up, but yet they don't have to really follow the general plan because they were there way before these updates? So those are just general questions that I wish that are also answered as we move forward. And thank you, and we do look forward to working with the Planning Commission, with the staff, and community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gloria Herrera, Gloria. Herrera, Herrera, and I come from Delano. We're in the sixth workshop and the very last one for the budget planning. So I am here to beg you to take Delano into consideration. And why? We already talked a little bit in the other workshops about the needs of Delano, but I still continue on the water contaminants that we have in Delano, which is when the contaminant is 1, 2, 3, BCP, arsenic, nitrate, and chromium. And I'm asking you for the to connect us to the right people. Like you said, he explained that you're not the ones that is going to decide what goes to where or who's going to help us, but connect us to the right people that can help us. We need to update the water lines, clean, the water contaminants. And so I beg you and I thank you for listening to us. And I hope there's changes in Delano. But the noises that trucks do, since they built Walmart, they have Paramount, they have Rilex. There's a lot of trucks that they run through. Now they're using the city streets, which is Garces, First Avenue, and there's a lot of noises. Present the safety, having those trucks going through the city roads, it's dangerous for the kids, especially there's a school where children walks, going to school, coming out from school. Delano, that area for those business that are coming in, they don't have the appropriate rules for those trucks to use. And thank you.
Thank you. Before I take any more testimony, you can sit down now. If you remember, I said at the beginning of the meeting that we didn't want a lot of redundancy. Now, you have given us a lot of great information tonight, but I think we're all hearing the same problems. So how many more people would like to speak tonight? Can you raise your hand? Okay, do you have new information? Because what I would like is new information. We understand the roads, the trucks, the dust, we've heard it now for quite some time. So if you have something new, or if you support what has already been spoken tonight, give me a show of hands so we recognize that you agree with what the other speakers have spoke to us this evening.
Stick to noise and stick to noise and the safety issues.
Yeah, and we want to stick to noise and safety because that is what the topics are this evening. So, for those of you that maybe wanted to speak, if you want to raise your hand and say, I agree with everything that's been said so far tonight, please do so now so we can move on. Otherwise, we welcome new information. So, next speaker, please.
David Fluhart, F-L-U-H-A-R-T, Havilah, First District. In Havilah, we don't have much noise from semi-trucks and whatnot, but sometimes we have airplanes and helicopters and fighter jets fly right over the house, and I'll tell you what, I love it. The closer and the louder, the more awesome, and go military, go flying. And to take that one step further, I think Airport Director Strickland is redoing the Meadows Field there, and hopefully we can get more airplanes and bigger airplanes and more traffic through that airport, and I'm looking forward to it, and that's part of the general plan, and I think they're going in the right direction. And I don't know about trucks and dump trucks and trash trucks, but airplanes, love them. The louder, the bigger, the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Carol Bender again, B-E-N-D-R. Mostly I want to speak about the noise element, but something came up with the safety. I want to make a quick comment on that. And looking forward into the general plan in terms of safety issues in Western Rosedale with the sprawl and the way that the building's going out there. Beyond Allen Road, it becomes a two-lane road. Services, fire, sheriff, sewer, all those are limited, yet the building continues. And I really would like to see that infill happening before we're building neighborhoods out on Enos Lane the way that it seems to be going now. With regard to noise, one of my concerns is the upcoming EIR for the high-speed rail project. Hopefully it will never be built as far as I'm concerned, but we need to plan as though it will. And given that it will be at elevations of up to 90 feet in the air going through Bakersfield proper, we need to make sure that our noise element is proper as well. This was a concern back in 2014 when the final EIR was approved, that we had not had our general plan update. Well, here it is, going to be 2018 probably by the time we get the EIR and the F Street location plan, and we probably still won't have it. So it's really important that we have a solid plan. The high-speed rail is trying to tell us that it's going to be coming 220 miles an hour through town. I don't know if that's particularly true, if that would hold up in court, because most of the time it needs to be 110 going through a city, but they're telling us 220. At 220, the decibel sound would be 100. 100 would be intolerable. It was beyond annoyance, beyond, a little irritation. You add that to the ambient noise level that's currently in all kinds of areas, coming through Shafter, the city, coming through Bakersfield, the city, coming through the farmland, the city. The information about the decibel sound magnification is important, because if we just have a noise element that says, okay, well, the top number is going to be 65 outdoor, 45 indoor. Well, what happens if your ambient is 45 and now all of a sudden you're going to okay a project, this is aside from high-speed rail, that's 65. So okay, well now we're going up, doubling, quadrupling, and what are we doing to mitigate? Is that a fair sort of a buffer between sensitive neighborhood source and a new, let's say, an M1? I'm not seeing some of these buffers that they're talking about. I'm not seeing the vegetation buffers along the roadways. I realize we're limited in funds, but in previous specific plans, roadways were supposed to have vegetation and all this kind of trees and things to help buffer the roadways, and that's not happening for monetary reasons. But I guess what I'm trying to say, because there's so much to be said in such a small amount of time, is we need to know exactly what sorts of instrumentation plans you're going to put in. What are we going to be measuring? How are we going to be measuring? We've seen all kinds of different projects out there being measured, the noise levels, in varied ways. They're not consistent. So as the public coming in, doing our homework, trying to figure out, saying these noise studies are not good enough, we don't have any teeth, because in one project it might be good enough to do it this way, in another project it might be good enough to do it a little less. It seems to be very loosey-goosey. And we would really appreciate that.
Wind up your comments, ma'am.
Sure. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel that the noise element and just the standard definition of what's adequate outside and inside is too vague, that it will not protect us in the future, that we need to have mitigation and buffers more specifically laid out in the plan, and that in order to protect us from whatever happens with this high-speed rail, should it come through our town, if we do not have it in place now, we will have no teeth to do anything about it, to negotiate it, because it's very clear in the EIR and the FEIRs that they're only going to do as little as possible, depending on how much money they have. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Gorospe, Gorospe, and I am a community organizer for the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. My brief comments will focus on safe applications of agricultural pesticides that farm workers, schools, and neighborhoods are adjacent to or within a mile. Pesticide drift is not uncommon. Kern County has had drift incidents in the past few months, most recently on May 5th, where many farm workers got sick. These same pesticides are used near our homes and schools in our county. Throughout Kern, industries like Big Ag are sited dangerously close to homes and schools, increasing the risk and negative health effects they pose to communities. According to the California Department of Public Health report in 2010, Kern County was ranked #2 in ag pesticides applied to fields. In 2010, 6,427 students were exposed to highly hazardous pesticides in Kern County. Latino school children bear the brunt of most of this exposure. So what decisions can we make and what policies can we put in place in the general plan for Kern County's health? Two ideas are reducing public exposure to hazards associated with accidental drift of pesticides. This should be a part of Kern County's future. Looking at requiring notification and placing restrictions on time and place of pesticide application to avoid potential exposures during school hours and school activities, including a prohibition of pesticide applications near schools on weekend activities as well. This is worthwhile to protect the health of children and other residents of Kern County. Lastly, establishing at least a 1-mile buffer zone between pesticide applications and sensitive receptors such as schools and residences is another way that we can protect the health of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm from Delano. My name is Arthur Rodriguez, R-O-D-R-I-G-U-E-Z. And some of these people already spoke about the truckers and all that. I live on Dover Place. That's the street they use. What I was going to say, we need more lighting on that street because the crime is going up a lot of theft and everything. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Cesar Aguirre, Cesaraguirre. I'm a community organizer with the Central California Environmental Justice Network. A lot of the things that I was going to talk about have already been covered, so I will not echo them. However, I do have some concerns that have not been talked about. Most of them concern oil and gas. As we know, Kern County is a huge monolith in the production of oil and gas here in California. And, I'm here to talk about, like he said, how would I like to see my community to look, I don't want my community to be a community that has a cancer rate that doubles. I don't want my community to be a community that exists in a level of pollution that ages brains at 2 years faster cognitively than any others. I want to be able to see the mountains when I'm driving home from school and not see a gray wall. That's what I want to see. So I'm going to address the things that are going to make those things possible. One of my biggest concerns is the label of small producers when it comes to people in oil and gas. There is, just to be specific, so you understand the effects on one person and one community, there is a site in the middle of Arvin that's right next to a house on Shane Court. I talked to the person that lives on Shane Court, and they say that the noise from that the oil well keeps them up at night. They've been affected, by the noise, as we've talked about here. They can feel the vibrations. Sometimes it becomes their alarm clock, and they wake up based on the pump, not on the sun. Another thing that they talked about was because they live so close and they're small producers, they are exempt from many regulations, and the effects are obvious when you look at the health of the family that lives right there in Shane Court in this house. The daughter has constant nosebleeds. Everyone in the house is constantly dizzy. When they're home, when they leave home, the symptoms seem to go away mysteriously. And that well is also 300 feet from a dentist's office, 200 feet from a Clinica Sierra Vista. It is 100 feet from an apartment complex with over 50 families, and it's a stone's throw away from a playground. And that's just one oil well. These are littered all over California. In 2015, there was a study that found that over 5 million Californians live within 1 mile of an oil well. And there's many of them that are labeled as small producers that are getting away with murder. They're spewing toxic chemicals into the air, and they're literally right next to houses. You can identify the most affected communities with the CalEnviro screen. I'd like to see that the communities that are highlighted in the CalEnviro screen to be the ones that are, have the most action towards them. One thing that Juan stated was that the families from Nelson Court were evacuated for 9 months, but they were also evacuated 21 miles away and expected to live their life normally, as if that was something that happens to everyone. And not only that, just a couple weeks ago, there's a big oil well that's empty right now, but the generator runs constantly. Every time I go, it's always running and it's labeled an inactive site. A couple weeks ago, me and a couple of my coworkers made a report because there was barrels of oil that were spilling onto a concrete block and into the soil right next to Nelson Court, where people were evacuated for 9 months. You want to talk about property damage, as we talked about in the safety. Having unregulated oil pipes and natural gas pipes that go underneath houses and make them potentially explosive, that sounds like it's dangerous to me. I don't want something like what happened in Pennsylvania, where a fracking well exploded and burned for 5 days, and they decided to apologize to the community with free pizza coupons. I don't want to be the next story where we get pizza coupons as an apology for a 5-day fire.
Okay, could you please wind up your comments,
Yeah.
sir?
Just one last thing on safety. It talked about geological hazards like unreasonable risk associated with the effects of seismically induced surface rupture. And the American Geophysical Union research on 2014 said that there was a swarm of moderate earthquakes in Kern, and there was a 97% statistical probability that it had to do with oil wastewater injected into the White Wolf Fault in between 2001 and 2005.
Okay, sir.
I'd like to keep you aware of the things that are happening. Don't overlook the disadvantaged, and keep in mind the overburdened.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Okay, before I close the public, do you want to speak, sir?
Actually, two things that were...
State your name for the record, please.
My name is Lupe Martinez, M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z, and I work with Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment out of Delano, and with most of the folks that were here tonight. Couple of things. I do want to go back. I believe it's Mr. Murphy, and we thank you for listening to the testimony. But a lot of these communities that have these issues and problems, there's always a need to where do you go to, to give your complaints or issues that you have. Understanding that you don't have the authority or that power to make things happen tomorrow or the day after, but we do know that in the general plan on these policies is what's coming for the future of the Colados, all the other families that live within that area, what's going to happen in the next 25 years. So this is why they bring their issues also to you, so that it's taken into consideration in these policies that you will recommend. Yes? And if you're going to recommend them, then you need to be aware of what the problems have been happening out there. You have Cherokee Colony, you have the Mexican Colony, you have the Lytle Colony, you have all these colonies that are in dire need of a lot of assistance. And so we're informing also folks to come to the, to be here and speak out, what are the issues so that we can look at policies for the next so many years. Really appreciate, Mr. Sprague, that your willingness to help in seeing what can be done immediately. It's not like the Lytle folks haven't tried to go to city council, went to city council, and Mr. Collado was, because there was a conversation about safety routes to school. And so we thought, okay, maybe that's one of the places. They said, no, that's not part of it because you belong to the county. At the same time, they were told that the area in Lytle is not annexed to Delano. Therefore, it's out of the boundaries. And I'm sure you're all going to find that out. The intent to set something up with Mr. Gleason, that is in the works right now too, because we know that's one of the things. With the state, really appreciate your effort or anyone's efforts to help with those issues that they've been dealing with for many, many years, living next to the prison. And I do mean next to the prison, which is scary at the same time. But the intents are there, and we appreciate, I just wanted to say, we appreciate you listening to our concerns and frustrations, but where else do we go? If it's not to you, to the county, where else do we go? Or what else do we do? So I wanted to thank you, first of all. The second piece I just wanted to make mention is on the safety as far as oil and gas, and I didn't hear it up here, is the fact that when the leakage happened at the Nelson Court, they didn't know where the pipes were at. So we need to figure out and how we make sure that all the pipes are known to us immediately whenever there's a disaster, an emergency, so on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker. Okay. Before I close the public portion, I'm going to turn to Mr. Murphy. I don't know if you are able to comment on this tonight or not, but I'll ask the question. It was from the very first speaker, and she asked, is the county and the city of Bakersfield working jointly on part of this general plan amendment? I believe was her question, a general question.
Chairman Babcock and other members of the commission. So when we had, we looked at potentially doing a joint update to the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan a couple years ago. We've gone through a public process at that time. Various concepts were presented to both the Kern County Board of Supervisors and the City of Bakersfield City Council members. And for reasons one or the other, it kind of had stalled and nothing had moved forward at that time. Both the city and our board and, are very aware, and the staffs of both the City of Bakersfield are aware that we are going through this general plan update process. We have had communications with, at a staff-to-staff level, whether or not what would be most appropriate, things along those lines. And the general indication that it has come from staff is that, it's more appropriate to have separate documents and not go through a joint general plan at this time. Again, our board is aware that we're going through this process. The city council is aware we're going through this process. The city staff at the City of Bakersfield are aware we're going through this process. From a staff or elected official level, I have not had anybody contact us that says, hey, maybe we shouldn't be going this direction. Maybe we should relook at having a joint document. So again, based on all of that, from a staff perspective, and one of the reasons we're going through this process is we've kind of identified that we think that we are going to move on separately and have our own document that covers the unincorporated areas in the City of Bakersfield. With that being said, this kind of leads to my next steps. All of the comments that were presented as part of this 6-month fact-finding process, and I consider it fact-finding in the fact that really this whole process was intended for staff to listen. We presented some of our generalized concepts, some of the things that we thought were appropriate, the directions that we think that we may want to pursue, but that was it. And then the intent was to listen, get feedback from the community, hear what they thought about those general ideas. What our next steps are while we have finished these 6 months worth of our initial fact-finding community input process, we will still continue to meet with all members of the community, other agencies, staffs regarding the development of this process. What we intend to do is, now that we have all of this information, we are going to go back, we are going to put together some documents that kind of outline what happened here, what was stated, what some of staff's thoughts are in terms of moving forward, identify the comments from residents that maybe disagree with the direction staff is thinking that we may want to go. And by the end of this calendar year, we will actually come back to your commission with a summary and some sort of document that puts this in writing so that your commission can give any additional feedback and say, well, staff, I know you were going this direction, this might be appropriate, things along those lines. Ultimately, once your commission blesses that or gives your feedback, that document will go ultimately to the Board of Supervisors for their final say and concurrence. All this will happen before we get into all of the drafting of the general plan and the different proposals. Again, some of that may take place as we kind of move forward, but the next steps are for staff to do some work. We're going to start putting things together on paper, start taking these concepts, fleshing them out in a little bit more detail. Again, we presented stuff to your commission, but it's been the initial discussion. Now that we've heard some of the comments, we will come back. Some of it could be revised. We may give a little more detail on what we were thinking. But again, ultimately, the thought is we're going to continue down this road so that when we get to the point of drafting a general plan, a lot of people will have a good sense of the direction we're going, and that direction will have been reviewed by both your commission and the Board of Supervisors. Regarding Western Rosedale, real quick, and again, Ms. Bender had indicated that she is just now kind of coming up to speed with what has been going on. Absolutely, if you want to continue to meet, you're welcome to come to the planning department. We can have further discussions. We may or may not get rid of the specific plan in Western Rosedale, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the approach we may go forward will still not identify it as a unique area, and it may still have its own unique components that only are applicable to the conditions that take place around Western Rosedale. So all those different ideas and concepts are still in flux. We're kind of looking at to see what is the best approach. Some people like specific plans and a little more detailed plans. Some people find it cumbersome to not know which document to go to. Is there a way that we can combine everything that we're looking for into the general plan? Those are all the things that we're going to be looking at. The only other comment I would offer regarding the joint general plan, and granted, the city of Bakersfield is clearly the largest city in Kern County. We do have 11 specific cities that are located within Kern County, and none of them have joint documents between the county and the city. Only the city of Bakersfield did. And again, those reasons were absolutely valid and it made sense. But it doesn't mean that the process and how we try to resolve some of these city, unincorporated county lands coming together are not specifically unique or unknown. We will be looking at those and see what the best approach is, not only for those unincorporated areas in the city of Bakersfield sphere of influence, but the unincorporated areas that are located within all of our adopted city jurisdictions, and how those interactions work. So again, in conclusion, while we will not be having these meetings, in the foreseeable future on these workshops, every other planning commission, we are absolutely still working on this project. We absolutely still want people to contact us if they have concerns, to continue to meet with us as we kind of go through the next phase. We've listened. Now it's our turn to try to put some of that into a form that can be better understood, digested, and then we can get more specific direction in terms of overall policy development that we may take as we go through the general plan. Again, the ultimate intention in this whole process is to, while we go through that, once we kind of get some direction, prepare a draft general plan. Ultimately, that would be reviewed by the public before we release and go through the time and efforts to prepare an environmental impact report. Again, we want to make sure that the environmental document does its best to represent exactly what the general plan is, and so we're going to be working this, kind of in that process. We want to get the policies out there, get the general plan out there so people can look and comment and get feedback, and we may have additional series of workshops at that time. That's all will be identified as we continue to move forward. But the intent would be to keep that in this process. Again, over the next 6 months, while we start working on kind of putting these papers on ideas and fleshing them out, we intend to begin work on getting our consultants on board who will assist staff in the preparation of the general plan and maybe some of these documents that we'll be presenting to your commission and things along those sorts. So yeah, while we will not be coming back here on a regular basis, we're still actively working on this project, and your commission or members of the public should continue to contact myself, Sean Beeler, Suzanne Hanson, if they want to come and meet and talk to us specifically regarding their thoughts, concerns, because it is a plan in development and process. You know, nothing is set specific at this time. We have our concepts that we are intending to pursue.
Thank you. Before I get to you, Mr. Sprague, I'm going to close the public portion of this now and turn it over for commissioner questions and comments. Mr. Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Murphy, I think you'll recall in the first workshop meeting that we had that I asked the question is, are we going to be coordinating with the city of Bakersfield? And I don't think I said other cities or communities within the county, but I should have. But it appears that that's not moving forth the way I think it should be moving forth, so that we have cooperation between the communities and the city of Bakersfield, so that we can work together on the general plan issue for the county and the cities and the communities. And the problem that I see in the conflict that I see without working with them on a one-to-one basis on these general plan updates is you have county islands within the city, a lot of them. You have county islands within different city, Arvin, communities, stuff like that, Delano area, that possibly skip being addressed by the local communities of the local city, and they all have their budgets and their jurisdictions and what they can and can't do, and the county can't tell them what to do because there's different jurisdictions. That's why these general plan updates need to dovetail together. And the communication has to be there between the planning directors and the planning staffs in order to accommodate and in order to make them functional. And so when it comes to us, I want to hear the public comment, and we did through the workshop on a lot of items, but there's a lot of items that didn't get covered either. So we're going to get moving forward into putting the general plan together. But I would like to see more cooperation with the communities, the rural areas, the other cities within the county, so that we're touching base with them and we're making strides to overcome a lot of the problems that have been brought up by the general public in these particular areas that can be resolved and changes made for an improvement for a better way of life. I don't think we're going to get there personally without cooperation of the public officials within the communities and other cities and jurisdictions within the county, other than Kern County itself, staff and planning directors. So a question would be, has our planning director met with the city planning director, the city of Bakersfield, any other planning director or planning staff within the county to try to coordinate concerns regarding the county's general plan, how it goes together, and how could those municipalities function together so that it can make the general plan update a better general plan update? How do we get there? And I just think a little bit of cooperation, a little bit of communication can go a long ways in making the lives of the citizens of Kern County a lot better. And I would really personally like to push forward with that. As a planning commissioner, I may not be able to represent the county of Kern to Jackie Kitchen, who's the planning director with the city of Bakersfield, or other planning directors or planning staffs. But as a citizen of Kern County, I can certainly go and talk to them about it and try to get them to communicate back with staff so that we can get a handle and get our hands around this thing to try to make it a better document. And so that's my purpose, and that's the reason I brought the question up early on in the first meeting. And it appears that I didn't get there, but I think there's still time that we can. I think we need to listen to these people that testified over these 6 workshops, and I think we need to try to help them if we can. So any way that we can assist as a planning group, I think the rest of them, I speak for them, I think, as far as trying to help the general community and the general citizens of Kern County. I really, really think if we put our heads together, we can actually be very successful with this general plan update. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, our next order of business is to receive and file this letter for workshop number 6.
Motion.
Second.
We'll cast your votes here in a minute.
All ayes.
Thank you. The next item is adjournment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.